Welcome back to the news today. Repressive regimes and political prisoners, the two unfortunately go hand in hand. But wherever rights are suppressed, there will be those who risk their lives by demanding fundamental freedoms. While separated by oceans, these individuals often end up sharing the same fate, still bars. Here with me tonight to discuss the matter, specifically the four political prisoners he is representing, is Irwin Cotler, former Canadian Justice Minister, who acted as consul to Nelson Mandela. Good evening. Thank you very much.
Good to be here.
For coming. You know, I started just the small discussion that we had just before we started this interview is I still find it very hard to believe that in 2016 we're still talking about people who are fighting for their right for freedom or for democracy, or because for us it's so obvious.
That's right, and the people here have several things in common. Number one, they're all imprisoned in countries of repression. Number two, these countries believe that by imprisoning them, they imprison the whole human rights struggle. Number three, they all embody the ethos of Nelson Mandela. In fact, they're known respectively in each of their countries as, let's say, the Mandela of Iran or the Mandela of Venezuela.
Let's talk a little bit about the Iranian political prisoner, Ayatollah Hussein Khamenei, right? You know, just a short while ago, world powers, the P5+1, signed a nuclear deal with Iran. Everybody's talking about the fact that a lot of issues were off the table. One of them is human rights. And, of course, we are seeing that Iran cannot rank itself on top of the world who are keeping human rights. You know, and it's amazing to see maybe the hypocrisy of the world, that you can do some business and you can forgive a country for something, but you can forget the basic issue, which is human beings or living there.
Look, the whole process of negotiating the nuclear agreement not only overshadowed, but ended up sanitizing the human rights repression in Iran. It's not that well known, but should be, that Iran executes more people per capita than any other country in the world. That a Shiite cleric like Ayatollah Bourjedi has been sentenced to, and he's now in his 11th year of imprisonment in an Iranian prison for doing nothing other than advocating freedom of religion, which is a fundamental right that all the democracies involved in the negotiating of the nuclear agreement should have also been advocating on his behalf.
You know, it's amazing for me because I'm always looking at the second person that you're representing, and is Raif Badawi, and he's from Saudi Arabia. And again, I want to take it to the international community when Saudi Arabia is standing as the head of a human rights committee, and some people there who are fighting for freedom and fighting for even human rights for everyone. How come the world is not seeing this? How come the world is not standing on its feet and saying, hey, this is wrong, this should not happen? And of course, you should not be the head of a human rights committee telling us what to do. I
remember the Andrei Sakharov, who was considered the father of human rights and the leader of the dissident movement in the former Soviet Union. When I met with him in the late 70s, he taught me a lesson I never forgot. He said, I do not know what will help the cause of human rights. I do know that it will not be helped by silence. And at that time, Sharansky was in prison, and he said, the trial of Anatoly Sharansky is a trial of human rights in the Soviet Union at the time. Same thing with Badawi. It is the trial of human rights in Saudi Arabia. And the shocking thing is that Saudi Arabia could be elected to chair a human rights panel of the United Nations Council on Human Rights at the same time that Badawi is sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, 1,000 lashes. It was a year ago that he was administered the first week, 50 lashes. It was supposed to be each week, but because of the uproar about the lashes, they stopped that torture, but he still remains in prison. Other countries are also selling billions of dollars in arms to Saudi Arabia and not making his release even a condition of that sale.
You know, I wanted to ask you a personal question. When you are coming and you're representing themselves, or either they are calling you or you are coming, seeing this case and saying, okay, I want this case, is religion getting into the middle? Because, you know, I'm seeing you're representing Muslim people in Muslim countries, not always so friendly to to the Jewish religion. Are you finding anything that is stopping you, that is telling you that maybe this can be problematic?
No, I haven't had that enter, as far as I can see, as an issue in my representations, because over the years I've represented political prisoners in different countries like the former Soviet Union, where religion did not enter the issue at all, or countries where in Saudi Arabia it is an issue because they're charged with insulting Islam and imprisoned for that reason. But I've not, as a lawyer, felt any disability because of that.
They don't feel uncomfortable that you are representing them in one way or another, like because of the differences.
Well, actually,
you understand why I find you understand.
But ironically enough, the only country that expelled me, both arrested and expelled me, the two countries that did was South Africa in the case of Mandela, and the Soviet Union in the case of Sharansky. So these were both countries where religion was not a factor at all.
What are the differences between dealing with these kind prisoners or any other prisoner, any other case? People who are advocating against slavery, who are advocating against basic human rights that are not being permitted in a certain country, to a political case, for example.
Well, the thing in each of these instances, what you have is what I would call the criminalization of innocence, and the criminalization of their fundamental freedoms, usually freedom of religion and freedom of speech, or both at the same time. You also find that whatever trial takes place is usually a sham, devoid of any due process whatsoever. The interesting thing also, and we talked about it just before the interview, is that I have found that where you have a spouse that is courageously advocating on behalf of the imprisoned political prisoner, there's a greater likelihood that they will be released. And I have to say that in these cases, they've had spouses that have been at the forefront of their advocacy, more important than the lawyers involved. So I think that's one of the things that encourages me, the courage of their particular spouses.
Let's talk a little bit about the woman behind the men. When you told me this, the first one that came on in my head was Fadwa Barghouti, the wife of Mohammed Barghouti, who is in jail, Israeli jail. And I'm asking myself, how really, because I'm seeing her advocating the case all around the world, talking in all forms, how much is it important for him in his specific case? How do you see his specific case, and what are the chances that he will eventually be out of prison? Because they're advocating it as he is a warrior of freedom.
Right, and the women in these instances become the face of the prisoner, become the identity of the prisoner, and they become their fundamental advocates internationally. It was the same when Anatoly Sharansky, now Natancha, was in prison. Avital Sharansky, his wife, became a household person in terms of her identification with the struggle.
Also Pollard's wife.
And Pollard's wife as well. So it's very important when you do have that kind of spell, because otherwise a person can be imprisoned and they end up becoming invisible because there are not people outside advocating on their behalf. In this instance, whether it be Leopoldo Lopez's wife, who came and testified before our Committee of Parliament, or Raif Badawi's wife, who actually lives in Quebec in Canada, who just received the Sakharov Prize on his behalf in Europe. So these women really, as I say, are not only courageous in their own right, but they put a face, a name, an identity on the struggle, and they help to internationalize the struggle.
So I see here 4 cases in front of me. What is the most challenging one between the 4?
They're all challenging, I have to say. They're all challenging. Where you mentioned the religious factor, it comes in 2 of the cases, in the cases of Badawi in Saudi Arabia and Bourjedi in Iran, because their very advocacy of freedom of religion becomes the basis for their imprisonment. And we're dealing with 2 theocratic dictatorships, which make it even more difficult to make a case heard for their release.
Fascinating. Irwin Cotler, always a pleasure having you here in the studio. Thank you very much for this.
And always good to be here.
Thank you.